Hey everybody, I've been using my refractometer more and more throughout my brew day, especially in the mash where I want to track the gravity readings as the mash progresses. And I got to thinking, how well is this ATC feature of the refractometer working? So I thought I would do a little bit of a deeper dive into different readings at different temperatures with the same wort. This is the equipment I'll be using today. We have some distilled water for the calibration, a pot, some wort, a thermometer, and some paper towels. I wanted to be able to conduct the experiments without really handling the refractometer too much, so I put it inside what we call a super clamp, and that's on top of a small tripod. You can see it here. I've also got the camera on a second tripod, sort of set at the correct angle to look into the refractometer. And also you can see here I have a light blasting into the instrument so the camera can get a solid image. Okay, first I'm going to start with just cleaning the refractometer. This is my normal brewing instrument, so it's I clean it on brew day, but it's probably good just to wipe it down ahead of time just to know we're getting clear readings. And I will use the same method in between every single different test, just so you know if I don't show it, I'm still cleaning it and drying it with paper towels. Okay, next we'll start with checking the calibration of the refractometer, and I'm doing that with the distilled water. So the recommended way is to put some distilled water on the platform, close the door, and then we'll see come up on the screen. You want that line to be even with the measurement line. So as you can see right here, it's in calibration. Luckily, this is a unit that I've had for many years, and I really never calibrate it, so it's held its calibration really well. Okay, so we have 2 quarts of wort here. This comes from a canned starter wort that I brewed to a little higher gravity than I dilute when I use it. So we're going to pour all this into a pot, which we're going to use to just heat it up at the different temperature levels. Before I start the heating, I'm going to grab a little bit and put it in the freezer to cool down the last sample, which would be below or normal room temperature. And there, you can see it there, we have it on the bacon. It's very important to put it on the bacon. So our first reading is just going to be room temp, and I just wanted to make it a normal temperature, so I moved it up to around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I usually take a little bit up in the eyedropper, push it back out just to acclimate and make sure everything is just that wort that's in there. Okay, so now we're going to put it on the platter, and we'll see this reading. Looks like about 6.4, I'll call it. This will be our baseline to compare against as we do the other readings. And just going to show that I clean it off each time between all the readings, kind of wipe all the old wort off and dry it off just so we have a neutral starting point. All right, next we're going to jump up to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm going to speed the video up here just so we don't bore you to death. Here we are at around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Throughout these tests, I'm also going to do a parallel version of just cooling the wort sample by itself and then taking the reading just to give a comparison. So So I just dip a little bit out, and I'm just going to place it in the chilled water just to bring the sample down to 75 degrees-ish, just to represent a room temperature cool down. First, we're going to take the direct sample. Okay, we can see that it reads pretty much almost exactly as the original reading, maybe a decimal point higher, maybe 6.5, 6.6, but still pretty close. And 149, 150 F is a pretty important range for measuring gravity in your mash. I'm happy to see that this is pretty accurate. Okay, so here's our sample that's been cooled. Just going to show the temperature there. It's roughly the same as our original wort sample. We'll go ahead and take a reading and put it on the platter. There we go, and still looks like it's spot on, so that's good to know. This method seems like the better way to go, but direct measurement is always easier, faster. So it's good to know that you don't have to do this step if you do not want to at this temperature. And we're moving on to 175 degrees. This would represent sort of a top end of a mash out temperature, so it's good for pre-boil reading. Here we are at our final temperature. Take our direct reading. Put it on the platter. And we can see the wort sample is pretty much the same. It started low, but you can see it sort of is raising here. As we watch it here, we're going a little bit higher as time goes by, which is kind of interesting. I guess as the sample evaporates a little bit, the gravity is actually going up. So that's something to take note of. Here's our 175 degree cooled wort sample. Roughly the same temperature as our original. We're going to put it on the platter, see what we get. Okay, this is kind of interesting. We've kind of started at a higher point. We're up to about 6.8, I would say. So in this instance, cooling the sample actually resulted in a little less accurate reading. Now we're at our highest point here I'm going to do today. This is 200 degrees F, not too far away from boiling. This temperature would represent something you might take from your boil kettle right before you're committing to your boil schedule. So once again, we'll take our direct reading first. And we can see it's actually pretty close to the original. We started about 6.5, and we can see that same behavior of the line moving upward gradually. That's just evaporation taking place. So that's kind of a good thing to know, that looks like the initial reading might be the most accurate. So right when you put it on that platter, make sure you're looking through it, because it does seem like at that temperature it's wanting to move somewhat quickly. So I'm interjecting a third method here. This is going to just see the result of just leaving the wort on the platter for 1 minute out in the open. You could say that this would allow the sample to cool on its own to room temperature, as opposed to cooling a larger sample and say that little stainless steel measuring cup. And just as a reference, I thought I'd throw this in here just to show any signs of evaporation, see how that affects the readings. And we can see that the reading came in a little bit higher than the other examples. So I would say leaving the wort on the platter is not a good approach to get accurate readings with your refractometer. Now we're going to go back to the cooled sample in a larger container. The larger sample size helps control the evaporation. And here we are at room temperature, or 75 degrees Fahrenheit, as we defined it. And we'll take our sample, put it on the platter. And here we are coming in at 7 even. So this is still not as accurate as the direct sample taken from the wort right on the platter. So that's a good thing to know. Our last sample for today will be coming out of the freezer to be chilled. And this sort of represents a post-boiled, post-chilling wort sample that you might take. And this might be for a lager beer. So I did it around high 40s Fahrenheit. And sorry, I forgot to adjust focus here. I use manual focus on my camera, so just have to chalk that one up. Okay, so put the sample on the platter. And this sample came in fairly close to the original. This one's about 6.6. So that's kind of interesting. But in general, still fairly accurate. Now what I'm seeing with the chilled sample is that it's actually going down as time goes by, which is pretty interesting. As you can see, at this point we're almost approaching the original wort reading. So that's something to keep in mind, that maybe your post-chilling gravity reading, you might want to give it a minute or two, let it settle out before you actually record that reading. So I've made a little screen here that's sort of a recap of all the readings I took today and a nice way to compare them. I've added a line that represents the original wort that goes all the way across the screen. And as you can see, the readings are in general pretty close. You know, they're pretty reliable, and I would say throughout the whole temperature range that the ATC feature is doing a pretty good job. Okay, some things to consider. The automatic temperature compensation does work well. That's good to know. Quick, direct samples are the most accurate. Evaporation negatively affects readings. It's best to take your sample quickly, put it on the platter quickly, and then take your reading quickly for the most accurate results. Direct samples seem to be the best. Any other attempt to cool the wort is actually taking away from some of your accuracy due to evaporation. So once again, quick and direct seems to be the best approach. My readings, my hot readings, actually drifted upward over time, so it's probably better to put the most emphasis on your initial reading. So right as you put it on the platter and look into the refractometer, that first thing you see is probably going to be the most accurate, especially for the hot readings. I hope this video has shed some light on how the refractometer actually behaves at different temperatures, different readings, and I hope it helps you in your brewing.